Alright guys, let me explain. We messed up. We have already recorded this video previously.
Yep. What happened was I wasn't in frame for most of the video. It'd be like that, you know, the room's under renovation, trying to get it ready and everything.
Right. And it might look the same as it did. That's just because we're focusing on this part last.
Everything else is behind the camera.
Right.
But, so, we're here again. Alrighty.
Indeed.
And what are we trying to explain, Logan?
We're trying to show y'all that just all around best rigs for bass fishing.
Yep.
Just the rigs that every bass angler needs to have in their arsenal.
Indeed.
There's only a few. But make sure you stick around and watch the whole video so you can see all of them and be the most well-equipped angler you can be.
Indeed. I'm saying that word too much again.
Mayhaps. Rig number 1, the Texas rig.
Indeed.
So basically this is like the first rig that most bass anglers learn.
A lot of people figure it out without knowing what it is.
Right. I mean, it's just super simple. You can use all kinds of different hooks. But basically, what you're going to want to do is you're going to take your worm or whatever plastic bait you're using. When I'm using a worm, I'm usually using an OWG, an offset worm hook. And you will pick your size based upon the size of your worm. But basically, you just want to go in about 3/8 of an inch or so, come out, come down, come around here, and you want to make sure you cover up that line tie, your eyelet there. That way you protect your knot. And you want to figure out where you're at on that worm, come straight through, and this worm is a weird shape, but I'll show you. So once you get that, it's just like that. Then you want to kind of skin hook it just a little bit. Tex-pose that bait on there, and there you go.
Yep.
Not the straightest rigging, but it does it for this video. But after you get that rigged up like that, you usually want to pick your favorite bullet weight to make it a quintessential Texas rig. So just figure out what size weight you want there, and you're just going to have that sitting right on top of your worm like that with the line coming through. Now you can peg that or not, just depending on what you're wanting to do.
Indeed. So right there, we just knocked out technically 2, what would be referred to as the weightless rig, and then weighted Texas rig.
Right. So weightless rig is just all that without a weight.
Yep.
That's the whole thing. And it is another super important rig and one that people start out with.
Yep. And many rigs are built off of this concept, as we will see in our next rig.
Mm-hmm. But first, this missile-based tomahawk, that's a cool little worm.
It's a twin-tail, curly-tail, triangular worm thing.
Yeah.
Put the bait up.
And just yet another variation of the Texas rig, kind of its own thing, kind of Texas rig mixed with drop shot.
Yep.
But a little different.
And that is, as we Americans would call it, the Tokyo rig, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Over in Japan, this is called the punch shot,
Indeed.
okay? But it is essentially a short leader drop shot attached to varieties of hooks.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's an EWG, but you can find them with worm hooks, flipping hooks, whatever.
And usually using a steel wire instead of like a fluorocarbon line.
Yes, as you can see, it's pretty thick right there, and then the gaff is actually hooked too. Thick too, Jesus. But this is a very popular rig to use with like punching.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're just trying to get something up off the bottom a little bit more.
Indeed. Right up out of that muck and, you know, the sticks and leaves and everything that are sitting on the bottom.
Yep. And same principle as a T-rig, as Logan just went over. So I'm just kind of going to gloss over the rigging.
Mm-hmm. While you're doing that, I'll just explain. This one has an EWG hook, an extra wide gap. But you can get Tokyo rigs with a variety of hook styles. EWG, OWG, Nico hooks, flipping hooks, anything you want.
Yep. And as you all can see, that is a text-posed standard setup. It's sliding down. It's sliding down. There it is. There she is. And then in Tokyo rig fashion, you either have 1 or 2 bullet weights on here.
And with the optional bead.
Yep, just gives it a little extra clacking sound.
Make it kind of sound like trying to imitate a crawdad down there on the bottom.
Which adds to the action if you're using like a creature or a crawl style bait to it.
Indeed.
Makes it even more juicy.
Mm-hmm. That's that Berkeley Pit Boss on there.
Indeed. Green pumpkin, purple.
Mm-hmm. Good. Quintessential rig number. We were really considering the Tokyo rig and the weightless as variations of the Texas rig. So this is really quintessential rig number 2, and that is the Wacky Rig. Now, you can see I held up this little doohickey. This is not a requirement for the Wacky Rig, but it does make it a lot easier. And this is called a Wacky tool.
Conveniently named.
So really, you just slide your worm down in that little tube till you get to the right spot. And then you want to take one of your little O-rings down here. If I can get it to do it, there it goes. Get down to the end there and pop it on. Now you might have to figure out really where the center is. About right there. That's looking really good. So now you got your little O-ring on there. And you don't even have to use O-rings if you don't want to. You can hook right through the worm, but the O-rings do make the worm last a little longer. So basically, after you get that O-ring on there, you want to take your little hook here, your Wacky hook, and don't really go into the worm. I mean, you can, but really you just want to go underneath that O-ring. And now you can see this is actually parallel with the worm. They do make O-rings that have another little ring on them that you can make the hook perpendicular to the worm. Mm-hmm. Or if you just hook it through the worm itself. And that is a lot better for hookup ratios, but for just the sake of this video, I'm just going to do it the standard way. There is a double O-ring technique that perhaps I'll do a short on in the future, and that helps get that hook perpendicular to the worm.
Indeed.
But this is a very finesse technique.
Yep.
You can throw it majority of the year. I would recommend spring through fall. But you just cast it out there, kind of do that number, and that little worm just goes whoosh, whoosh, and then kind of sinks back down, and they get it on that fall, boy.
They also come in weighted varieties.
Yes, you can get a Wacky jig head, and those are nice if you really want that falling action. I do recommend those as well.
Next up, kind of on the topic of finesse here, just for a short little bit.
I mean, you know, really, if you think soft plastics, majority of the time you're probably thinking finesse. Which all techniques are not necessarily finesse, but this one is.
Indeed.
As was the last one.
This is the Shaky Head, alright? So take your favorite trick worm, speed worm, really any worm.
Yeah, finesse worm. Heck, even Senkos.
Yep. Twin tail grub.
Yep. Crawl style baits.
Yeah.
Beaver style baits. Any style bait.
Typically, though, most people go for actual shaky head worms or trick worms.
Mm-hmm. This is that 6 cents divine shaky worm.
Yep, 7 inches right here. And then hardware, we're talking ball head jigs, alrighty? Now, these come in different varieties, different designs, and different features. Primarily, you have screw lock versions or just standard bait keeper versions. Mm-hmm. Screw lock versions will have a little screw lock embedded into the head where you would screw your bait into. We do not have that one, so we're going to be rocking the old style.
Right.
And essentially,
that's just what we had here.
T-rig this sucker. Basically, you send it in, send it up, alrighty. Put it over your bait keeper. Twist this sucker around. And then now you have 2 different options. You can either embed the hook point within the worm and leave her there, or you can pass the hook point through the worm and then text pose that sucker. Text pose that hook point into the worm if you pass it all the way through. Mm-hmm. And these are both valid variations of a shaky head.
Indeed. And both effective.
Yes.
I mean, a shaky head is a very effective technique the majority of the year. And you can even power fish it if you want. I mean, there's different ways you can do it. I feel like the best way to do it is cast it out, leave your line a little slack, leave some line sitting on top of the water, and just barely shake your rod. And it might seem like it's not going to affect that worm at all, but it really does.
Yep. Last year, caught a 5-pounder on a shaky head speed worm.
Mm-hmm.
It works. It catches fish already. So don't forget about it.
Absolutely. You know what I just realized?
What's that?
We're the Rhett and Link of fishing YouTube. Ned Rig. So basically, all a Ned Rig is a small worm or plastic placed on a mushroom-style jig head.
Yep.
Usually 2.5 to 4 inches in length. It's a very finesse tactic. And there's several variations of the jig heads you can use.
Yes. Many manufacturers produce jig heads for these. Z-Man is what most people will think of. But Strike King also does it. There's
missile baits. Really, just about everybody has.
Yeah, honestly.
One. Eagle Claw.
Yeah. The Ned Rig.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting pretty ubiquitous now. But for people in the South, this is newer.
Yeah, still trying to catch on a lot more. It's a very Western technique for a long time.
Yeah.
But now it's hitting over here. I know the Northern guys really love it, and the Southern guys are feeling its effects.
Yes, yes, indeed. Now, this specific head is a EWG mushroom Ned locks from Z-Man. So, primarily they come in either worm hook or EWG varieties.
Absolutely.
The only difference you get is whether or not if you want an open hook or not.
Yeah. Basically, if you think of the standard Ned Rig, basically you have a mushroom head with, say, finesse jig style hook or like an Aberdeen style hook.
Indeed.
And this is paired with that Strike King Ned Ocho. Good little Ned worm there.
Yes, very tight action on these already. But, like we said, every brand now are making it.
Yeah, I mean, Ned Rig has just blown up so much.
Zoom, Strike King, 10,000 Fish, obviously. You could bite down a Senko if you can't find your favorite Senko manufacturer that has like one that size.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, it's not even just worms anymore. It's
no,
all
bugs,
creature baits, craws, all kinds of stuff. Now, I've seen frogs.
Yeah.
That's a weird one. But it's just every company now knows how effective the Ned Rig is and how simple it is.
Yeah.
Just cast it out there. Now, there's multiple approaches. Cast it out there, you bottom bounce it, you slow roll it on the bottom, or you just swim that sucker back.
Indeed, the Ned Rig was originally designed to mimic swimming actions, but
like a little minute going there.
Everybody found out it works great bottom bouncing too. So, a very versatile technique, and you can power fish it. You can get 1/4 ounce or larger Ned heads and throw a 5-inch worm on the sucker.
Absolutely.
The 6-inch flatworms are really good for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And smallmouth guys.
Oh yeah,
that's a technique for you.
Oh yeah, especially with a bait with some nice stretch technology like your Z-Man TRDs or your Sakoshi bugs with a Stretch X.
Stretch X. That's pretty much it for the video, though. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully you guys learned some new techniques. If you didn't learn any new techniques, maybe you learned something about a specific technique that we talked about here. But again, these are techniques that every bass angler should know. This should be in your arsenal.
Yep, these techniques will prepare you for almost any fishing scenario.
And they'll catch you some big fish.
Yes.
But anyway, with that, we're going to wrap up this video. We don't want to waste any more of y'all's time.
Nope.
And we don't want to drag it on. So, like, subscribe, ring the notification bell.
Set that sucker to all already.
And enjoy